This is TWiT.
So I guess this happened since our last show, but I think it's a huge story. Again, more revelations from the NSA. And now this one's a little bit more controversial. The Washington Post published a story 1 week ago saying that what happened is that Snowden, among all the stuff that Snowden gave the press, he gave a big database of intercepted data from the NSA. 160,000 records in there. And what the Washington Post did is hired a data expert, because it was not structured in any way. It was just a dump. Hired a data expert to parse it, and they found that most of these conversations were not foreign nationals, but U.S. citizens. And in there were email addresses, pictures, personal stuff. So 10,000 account holders, they cataloged, let's say, many other files described as useless by the analysts, but nonetheless retained, have startlingly, this is the Washington Post, intimate and even voyeuristic quality. They tell stories of love and heartbreak, illicit sexual liaisons, mental health crises. This is all in the data. Political and religious conversions, financial anxieties, disappointed hopes, the daily lives of more than 10,000 account holders who were not targeted by the NSA, but nevertheless recorded, and more than that, cataloged by the NSA. 160,000 intercepted email, instant message conversations, some of them hundreds of pages long, 7,900 documents, 11,000 online accounts, all from President Obama's first term, 2009 to 2012. This clearly proves the NSA is collecting and in some cases analyzing personal information from U.S. citizens. No question about it.
Right.
No question.
That would fall under nefarious. That
is nefarious.
Yeah.
Now, there was a little bit of heat on this, and maybe Dan Patterson, you can explain, because some people said, no, it wasn't the NSA that violated these people's privacy. It was the Washington Post and Edward Snowden.
Oh, that's interesting.
This is a follow-up post, the debrief, published by the Washington Post and the reporter Barton Gellman, who broke the story. He said, some readers and commentators have described the story as an overheated statement of the obvious, that surveillance of one person includes the content of people who talk to him. Others have said the Washington Post, not the government, invaded the privacy of innocents because we published their conversations. The NSA did not. In the view of some critics, we displayed ignorance of NSA systems or knowingly chose to distort the way they work. Now, he acknowledges it's a very complicated story. He said, we drafted the story carefully. We stand by all of it. He explains in the article how they parsed the data. He said most of the accounts we found in the pile, and it was just a dump of a pile of data, were not NSA targets. Some commentators think that's unremarkable. I'll come back to that. 9 out of 10 account holders found in a large cache of intercepted conversations were not the intended surveillance targets, but were caught in the net the agency had cast for someone else. He says, actually, I underplayed that amount, that number. It was the only one we could measure with any precision, but we think it was actually a lot more.
How did they determine that individuals weren't targeted?
Well, he says, we didn't have an official NSA list of targets. We had to find them in the pile ourselves, so they hired an independent researcher who tried to figure out, kind of structure all this. Yeah. Who was the target and who was the collateral damage? And he said sometimes we probably... Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He says some of our questions could not be answered with the data we had. For that reason, our story did not say what some commentators have imputed to it. We did not say there are more Americans and foreign targets in the pile. We suspect that's true, but we couldn't establish it reliably. But they did say nearly half of the files contain names, email addresses, and other details that the NSA marked as belonging to U.S. citizens or residents. So what do you guys think? I mean, I think the general takeaway that I saw in all the press was the NSA is spying on U.S. citizens. That may be collateral damage, but they are collecting that information. Analysts are looking at that information, and this is going far beyond what they are legally entitled to do. Others say, as I said, well, that's just what happens when you collect data.
Yeah, and I would say, this just verifies the data that we already have, right? We already know that American citizens are being spied upon, and it's I think it comes down to if you're that person that's fighting against privacy invasion, and you're like, you know what, I think that this should not be happening, then you can't use technology right now, because by using any kind of technology, I think you're opening yourself up to this kind of stuff, right?
That is true, although it's an untenable suggestion for most people in this era.
Yeah.
And particularly, look, I was at the UN for 5 years, and I'm looking at my bucket of press releases. I have over 150,000 press releases that come from all countries, including Iran, Syria, Libya, the most terrifying places in the world. I'm on their email list. It makes a big difference when you think of this as an abstract, and then when you think of this as you, and you can set a set of criterion and say, look, and also we should put alleged in front of all of this, but you can say this is the criterion by which the NSA made a list of the people to gather information from, and then you can put spokes out from the people who fit that criterion, and you can say whether it's okay to gather data or not gather data, or whether this is what happens when you gather data or don't gather data. You can easily connect those dots and see who and what types of people have been spied on and the degree to which they've been spied on.
Yeah. But on the one hand, at the top of the show, we were talking about Leo's watch and more technology that we're embracing and getting excited about and all these things. And then on the other hand, we're concerned about the privacy, but yet we want more and more technology to make our lives easier. So where do you draw the line? Do you just say, hey, I'm just, I'm cutting the cord. I'm not going to do anything from now on.
What I know are people, and particularly journalists and colleagues of mine, are doing a few things. And there's nothing that you can do that really prevents all of this, but there are some small measures you can take. First is encrypt everything. The second is, although it's not really going to make you safer, you can move to MyColab or to Proton Mail or something that is stored at least outside of the auspices of the U.S. Now, I don't really believe that this is going to keep you safer, but it is a protest move, and it's one that says, look, I'm willing to take my own privacy seriously. The other thing that you can do is, which is what I'm doing right now, is taking everything of importance out of Google and using the Google account to access things, because you have to, but not allowing an indexing of your personal data. I mean, no, you can't escape everything, but you can take measures. They may be half measures, but you can send a pretty loud signal.
Yeah.
Bruce Schneier, we've had on this show. Love Bruce. He's the security guru, go-to guy on this. He says, and he said this in a talk earlier this week at the New America Foundation, a panel discussion called National Insecurity Agency, How the NSA Surveillance Programs Undermine Internet Security. Schneier said the issue is not that the NSA is spying on whoever the bad guy is that they want to spy on. The issue is they're deliberately weakening the security of everyone else in the world in order to make that spying easier.
Right.
Yes. Putting backdoor access in, undermining encryption protocols, hacking into Yahoo and Google's private interconnects. They're undermining security in general. And I think when China says don't trust the iPhone, what their real message is, the USA is spying on us, and any any company that is in the USA, whether intentionally or not, is acting as an arm of that agency.
Yeah.
And it provides permission.
Say again, Dan?
Most of them don't know. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the lag. I keep cutting you guys off. But it gives this tacit permission. Well, if the NSA can do it, we can do it. And that actually figures into security and threat models far more than just the NSA. I'm far more concerned about China and Egypt than I am about the NSA. But because the NSA is capable of this, and because they've been doing it, it gives these other countries permission to do it and say, well,
it escalates.
Right, exactly.
And Dan, I wonder if you mentioned the alternative email clients, et cetera, that you can use to, sort of be more secure online. And I wonder, I go back to the, that pile of data that they were using, and what key were they using to flag people that they're going to look deeper at? Do they look deeper at people that are obviously trying to hide stuff? Or can you hide in plain sight by just...
They have said, the NSA has said, if you use encryption, if you use Tor...
Tor, you're screwed.
We are going to...
Flagging yourself.
We can't tell... This is their excuse. We can't tell if you're a foreign national or a terrorist, so we're just going to collect everything. So that's the other side of this equation. I use a PGP encryption on my email. It's a flag.
Right.
It's saying, hey, I might be up to something. So they collect everything you do.
You've got something to hide, so we need to target you.
Which means
it's like a crowd of people. You see a crowd of people, and everyone looks kind of the same. And you see one person doing this. You're gonna
that's
look
why
at that
I try to get everybody to do PGP. The more of us that do this. The other point the Washington Post makes is this is already data that's been minimized according to the rules. The rules are that if it doesn't have anything to do with an investigation, you should minimize it. You should redact it. You should remove personal information. Yeah. They say the data we got was already minimized. So it's worse. It's worse than that they're saying. 9 out of 10 people in this database were U.S. citizens not connected with foreign nationals. And that's the minimized version.
Take my word for it, right?
I'm sure that we are all familiar with the panopticon, and that's exactly what we are experiencing here. Well, why bother? Why bother encrypting? Why bother using Tor? Why bother using Proton Mail? Because that's just a flag. So maybe I just shouldn't say anything. I should just shut up.
I frankly think that one of the conspiracy theories that is somewhat credible is that this whole thing is intentionally planted by the NSA to make everybody feel like that the whole point of the Panopticon, which was a prison that was designed to make prisoners feel like there was no way they could do anything without being surveilled. The design of the Panopticon was that the prisoners couldn't see the watchers, but the watchers could see the prisoners. So the prisoners never knew if they were being watched. The presumption would be then, I'm always being watched, so I'm going to behave. I think that's, you could make the case, this is exactly what the NSA would like. Yeah. This impression that we're all being watched. And so watch yourself.
It's like fake traffic cameras,
psychological bit. That psychological bit is far more powerful than any, kind of surveillance they could do. Right?
It's working.
I mean, I feel like I've talked about this so many times. This story specifically, nothing about it surprised me.
No, at this point, we've heard it all, haven't we? Yeah.
I think it was important. Nothing about it surprised me, but I still believe in, that I think we do need sort of a new kind of Bill of Rights, digital era sort of Bill of Rights to at least come to some discussions, some really hard discussions about what are the rights that we should expect, people should expect on the internet in terms of especially privacy and data and those type of things. It's going to be just like any time you've created something like this, there's going to be a lot of arguing. There's going to be a lot of, give and take. But I feel like we haven't had those discussions, and so we're slowly just sliding down the sort of accepted practices, and I just think it's a bad road to go down. And at some point there needs to be sort of a grassroots movement to sort of take back the sort of rights, or at least set expectations. And it needs to be. I think it's going to have to be bottom up, and it's going to have to force people in power to think about it. I don't like internet legislation. I'm not necessarily suggesting a body to oversee this or be in charge of the internet. But I do think we can come to some reasonable expectations about what kind of privacy we should expect and what kind of sort of rights people have and those kinds of things.